The answer for the warm-up at the top here was negative 270. And for the bonus down at the bottom should have been 29. Pick a number 1 to 5. The winning number today is 3. Homework is not 50 points today, it's 100 because it was double. It was an after-test assignment. If you have all of your work shown, then you can bring it up and show it to me. If you do not have all of your work shown, don't bring it up here. You'll just have to finish it later and then put it in the second period folder for the bucket back there. There's a black crate next to the orange bucket. 7 people here, 5 had it, and that's going to give us a percent of 71. Here are the answers. I'm just going to go through the answers, and if you want to see the work for any of these, we'll go back and look at it separately at the end, off camera. Maybe. Number 1 is 33. 2 is 27.5. 3 is 122. 4 is 13. 5 is 45. 6 is 13. 7 is 84. 8 is 114. 9 is 29. 10 is 108. 11 is 9. 12 is 13. 13 is 19.5. 14 is 5. 15 is negative 17. 16 is negative 12. 17 is negative 12. 18 is 65. 19 is 287. 20 is 56. Next up is the test review. Here are the answers for the test. 1 is negative 1. 2 is negative I. 3 is negative I. 4 is negative 1 minus I. I wrote it kind of funny. I just didn't want, I do this in ink and I can't go back and change it. 5 is negative 12I. 6 is negative 5 minus I. 7 is I. 8 is negative 1. 9 is 14 minus 2I. 10 is 2 plus I. 11 is negative 6I. 12 is negative 2. 13 is 15 plus 8I. 14 is negative 24 minus 12I. 15 is negative I. 16 is negative I. 17 is negative 3 minus 12I. 18 is negative 3 plus I. 19 is negative I. 20 is negative 1. Extra credit A is 69. B is -8. C is 12. D is 142. E is -14. For today, it's still the complex number system, but now we're going to solve quadratic equations with real coefficients that have complex solutions. And most of you have probably already done this in Algebra 1 in some form, so this might be a review. Here's example 1. First, you have to know what a quadratic equation is, so we'll review a little bit in case you forgot. It's ax squared plus by plus c equals 0. If it's in that form, then it's a quadratic equation. Now this says discriminate. It's supposed to be discriminant. No TE, it's NT at the end, the discriminant. This is the item that's under the square root sign in your quadratic formula that you use to solve a quadratic equation. What the discriminant does is it lets you know if the answer is going to be a real answer or an imaginary one. Like if it's 0 or higher, you have a real answer. If it's less than 0, then you end up with a complex number with an I in it. So if b squared is less than, or if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, then you will have an imaginary solution. Here's an example. 2x squared plus x plus 6 equals 0, and we have to solve this. Here's your first step. You have to figure out what a, b, and c are. So a is going to be the item next to the x squared and the sign that goes with it. So you'd have a 2. The b is the number that's next to x and the sign with it. What is that number next to x? 1, yes. So we put a 1 down. And c is just your constant number at the end with the sign that goes with it. 6. So 2, 1, 6 is ABC. Now you have to use the discriminant to figure out if it's going to be a real answer or if you're going to end up with a complex answer. So A, B, and C that we found, you plug those into that little formula and then evaluate it. 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times 6. What does it come out to be? That's right, -47. 1 minus 48 is -47. So since it's a negative number, we know we're going to end up with a complex answer. It's going to have an I in it when we go back to use the formula. So the solution is less than 0 and it'll be imaginary. Use the quadratic formula, -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that over 2a to solve the quadratic equation. So you're going to insert 2, 1, and 6 into the formula that we just put on the screen. And when you write the formula, it's a good idea to practice putting parentheses where there should be a variable. That way you know if you have a negative number to dump in, you don't have to run the risk of dropping this negative sign just because you think it's gone, simply because you have a negative b value at any time. Alright, so we had 2, 1, and 6 for our values, and from the formula, a is 2, so that goes in here, in those 2 spots. B is 1, so it goes in there, and C is 6. Now don't forget, we've already done the discriminant. The discriminant is this one here. So you don't have to go back and work this out again. You know that it's going to be a -47. So just simplify the other 2 parts of it. -1 plus or minus the square root of -47 over 4. Now, do you remember what I equals from the last test? No, not that. Square root of negative 1, right. So, with that square root of negative 47, that's where I'm going to get my I from, that lets it be imaginary. What you can do is factor out the square root of negative 1. So now you have square root of negative 1, square root of 47. You can factor that out. And we know from the last test that the square root of negative 1 is I. So you can go back and do this. Replace that square root of negative 1 with an I. Once you reach this point, you have to check to see if you can simplify any of this stuff. Is there a number that all three of these terms have in common? Negative 1, I square root of 47, and 4. Is there anything I can factor out of all three of those items? I don't believe there is. So if you reach that point, then you're finished. This is your final answer. Example 2. X squared plus 2x plus 10. You tell me, what is A? A is 1. What's B? And C. Alright. We have to find the discriminant. Can you tell me the formula for the discriminant? 2 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, and then times C, which is 10. Yeah. B squared minus 4AC. That's the discriminant. So we have to simplify that out. What does this discriminant equal when you evaluate it out? Negative 36 is right. So we have a negative 36. That means that our answer is going to be what? Imaginary, yes. So we have a negative 36. Don't forget this, because you can just put that under the square root sign in the formula when we go there. So here is the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. All of that over 2 times a. And we know we had a equal to 1. So there's where your a's go. And b is 2. There and there. And then c is 10. But like we said on the previous page, we've already done this. This came out to be what? Negative 36. So simplify out here just to get negative 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 36, and then all of that over 2. Now, sometimes you have to simplify these because it's just what happens. Is there anything about this expression that you see that we need to do next? Yeah, we got to simplify what? We need to square root, or not square root, but simplify this part, and we do it by writing what? I, and then square root of 36, yeah. That's right. So anytime you have a negative square root, just take out an I and eliminate the negative sign. Now there's still something else that can be simplified in this. What is that? We're now on this part here, so we're done with this part. What of this part can be simplified? You might be able to simplify the negative 2 with the 2 on the bottom if there's something over here you could also cancel out with it, but there isn't right now. There could be if we do something next. Square root of 36. 36 is a what? It's an even number. What else is it? It is a multiple of 4. It's something else. it's not the square root of 6, it is the perfect square of 6. 36 is a perfect square. And if you have a perfect square under a square root sign, then you can simplify it. What is the square root of 36? 6. So we'll do -2 plus or minus. Now you don't write I6 now. This is in front of a square root sign. Now that we've changed this to 6, you put it to the right of it. Just make it 6i. Now back to what Storms was saying before, we could reduce now the 2 and the 2 as well as the 6. What number can I take out of all three of these? 2. Yeah, I can divide everything by 2. If I divide -2 by 2, what do I get? -1. If I divide 6i by 2, what am I left with? 3 what? 3i. And if I divide 2 by 2, I get what? 1. What number am I never allowed to leave in the denominator by itself? 1, right. So it's just -1 plus or minus 3i. Practice 1. X squared plus 3x plus 8 equals 0. What is A? B? C? Alright. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So insert that for b, and then your a is 1 and your c is 8. That's 9 minus 32, which is a -23. That means we will have an imaginary solution. So on this side, we'll have -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that over 2a. And let's insert our values. We have 1 for a and 3 for b, and then 8 for c. Don't forget, we've already done this part. It was a -23. So square root of -23 is what we put. And once we do that, we have to get rid of that negative value there. So we have to do -3 plus or minus I square root of 23. All of that over 2. The square root of 23 cannot be simplified, and there's nothing that all three of those terms have in common in the fraction that you could divide out, so that is your final answer here. The bonus was 181.